So I think BTS not only showed a good example by, you know, saying that they will serve, which puts to shame a lot of the politicians who advocated for their exemption.
Mm,
I say again, puts to shame
mm.
a lot of these politicians who did that.
Welcome to the Korea Deconstructed podcast. This is a conversation with the retired Lieutenant General Chun In-Bum. The general has played a really important role in the development of South Korea as a nation, as a society. He's had tens of thousands of people, men, working under him, serving under him. He was present in 1983 in Rangoon when North Korean terrorists tried to assassinate the South Korean president. Throughout this, he's gained many experiences and he has a fascinating outlook on life. It was a pleasure listening to him, talking to him, learning from him. There's a wealth of knowledge in this man. I hope you enjoy it as much as I did. This week, the big story has been about BTS and military service. I wrote in my column this weekend that to understand this situation, you need to understand a lot of Korean history through Japanese colonization, the division of the peninsula, the Cold War that exists, everything that's gone on. But as a retired military man yourself, what was your take on this issue that's gripped the world, the group's decision to fulfill their mandatory military service? Was it a good decision? Is it something you support? Or does soft power and culture and economy, should that take precedent? How do you see this, General?
Well, first of all, I really welcomed the announcement that the 방탄소년단 BTS
Mm,
will serve in the military. And there was a moment when I thought, you know, I really thank them for this decision. But then again, I thought this is just, they're fulfilling their duty. So um, it's a thank you to all the men who must do mandatory service in Korea. Having said that, 20, 30 years ago, there was a surplus of males that could actually serve on active duty. So about 50% were conscripted into the military.
mm,
And if this was a perfect world, the rich and well educated would be first conscripted, and the less fortunate would be conscripted, would not be conscripted. But since this is not a perfect world, the opposite happened. And it happens everywhere,
mm,
even in the United States.
mm.
I'm sure even in UK. You're from the UK?
Yeah, correct.
Yeah, even in the UK, I'm sure this same phenomena would have happened. But anyway, Korea during those years, 30 years ago, 40 years ago, it was just an accepted fact. What's more disappointing is that people who were in positions of leadership did not fulfill their obligations by sending their sons to active duty either. So uh, mistrust within the society, I believe, was present.
Mm,
Um, as times passed, especially now, we don't have the kind of manpower that we used to have. And now nearly 90% of all eligible males must be conscripted. So about 5% can't be conscripted because of medical issues.
mm-hmm,
Another 5% are being exempted because of present laws, and which allows them to serve in other capacities, which I think needs to be fundamentally changed, especially with what BTS has shown us. I mean, if BTS has to serve, how can we say, other people cannot serve?
mm. Right.
So unless for conscientious objectors and for those for religious reasons and for medical reasons, I don't see any exemptions that should be allowed anymore in Korea. So I think BTS not only showed a good example by, you know, uh, uh, saying that they will serve, which puts to shame a lot of the politicians who advocated for their exemption.
Mm,
I say again, puts to shame
mm.
a lot of these politicians who did that. But again, I think it's a turning point where we need to fundamentally relook at the laws and regulations that we have right now for exemptions. So conscientious objectors, religious objectors, which I guess falls into that,
Mm,
medical reasons, and some merchant marines.
mm-hmm.
Uh, they serve they serve a different category, but it's a very difficult service. So except for these reasons, I don't see any exemptions that should be required. Now, give me another minute.
Mm.
I do believe that, for example, BTS, we might have considered them serving after the age of 35. So an extension of the age, which is now, I believe, 29 maximum,
Mm.
could have been extended a little bit more. But in the future, I think we need to relook at the whole policy.
It's interesting you mentioned the politicians. A lot of people don't do it. I believe the last two presidential candidates in the election, neither of those have done it for different reasons. But before we look at exemptions, I just want to ask you about the thank you, General, because when I addressed the issue of mandatory military service in my lectures on contemporary Korean studies at Hanyang University and Seoul Women's University, one of my students only a couple of weeks ago, his name is Juwon, when he raised his hand to speak on this issue of mandatory military service, he said, I completed mine, and I want you, before I say anything, I want you to thank me. And there was that idea of it's a duty and it's not something that he wanted, but it's a feeling that I keep getting. And about that issue of thanking, and you wanted to thank BTS for choosing to do it as well as acknowledging it's a duty. Could you just perhaps speak a little bit more on that necessity of thanks or gratitude, or what that means, or how that ties into this national duty, please, General?
Yeah, nobody wants to pay taxes, right?
Right.
But we do,
Yeah. Yeah.
you know.
Mm.
Nobody wants to serve in the military. I, I take that back. A very few percentile does want to serve.
Mm.
Those are very special people. But the majority don't want to serve in the military, because unless you serve, you really don't understand how the deprivation that one person must go through during military life.
Mm.
And that kind of deprivation is necessary to indoctrinate somebody to kill another person. No, it's not easy. I don't even like killing a chicken. I've never killed a chicken. My limit is swatting a mosquito or a fly.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, because of, yeah, great invention. There's a necessity to indoctrinate these young men and put them in a very isolated condition. And I don't think people really understand how difficult that is unless you serve.
Mm.
So I've had multiple people saying, "Oh, I served because I was in an industrial company doing substitute service, or I did service as a medical person in some lonely island." Or no, it's different. You
Mm.
know, uh, no young soldier that I know complains about training, of how hard the training was. When you complete a training cycle or an event, a great pride or a uh, confidence rises in your emotions and in your body. But it's not that. That's the hard part. It's the it's the deprivation and isolation and all the petty, you know, discipline that goes on in the uh, within the military, uh, in the barracks, what we call barracks life,
Mm.
and people just don't really understand what kind of hardship that is. And then I'm assuming you might have seen the Netflix miniseries DP.
Yep.
Now, those were very extreme examples put into one barracks.
Mm.
Okay, but there are those people. In most cases, the instigators were victims themselves doing these same things. I mean, really cruel people. It's just amazing. Uh, we try to stop it. We sometimes do. Well, we we're mostly successful 90% of the times.
Yeah.
But that means still 10% get away with it. And a lot of tragedy that was dramatization in the miniseries happens. So I think every soldier deserves a thank you for the rest of their lives for their service, especially the ones up on the DMZ,
Mm.
up on the hills. You know, um, uh, every soldier uh, deserves a big thank you, in my view.
Thank you. Do you think with this idea of deprivation, you've mentioned the exemptions, and there used to be more for tattoos and obesity and things like that. With the world's lowest fertility rate, the exemptions get hard. But in terms of that deprivation, South Korea is now it's a hyper modern techno wonderland. It's not perfect, but it's very much an advanced country now. And so compared to when it was still developing, the 60s, the 70s and 80s, does that deprivation feel harder? Does it feel stronger? I think young children or young men, young adults now have a greater sense of individualism, a sense of the personal sovereignty, and they don't want to do other things. So do you think that that's making the service harder because the deprivation between modern Korean life and the barracks life is greater than what it might have been 20, 30 years ago? Does the deprivation change over time, psychologically perhaps?
No, I think it feels the same.
Okay.
So 50 years ago, the men were hungry.
Mm.
I mean, they were hungry. They were cold and they were beaten up every day, flogging for no good reason throughout the military.
Mm.
We don't even know how many men killed themselves. You know, I mean, the level of injustice 50, 60 years ago is something that can't even be imagined right now. So now I can tell you, Dave. May I
Mm.
call you Dave?
You may.
Okay, Dave. Um, we've solved the eating problem. We've had some scandals last year, but there are 2,000 mess halls in the Korean military.
Mm.
We had maybe, what, 10, 20 of them uh, making these bad examples. That was just bad leadership, you know.
Mm.
But 1,900 of them served their soldiers quite well. So, in my view, eating is no more a problem. I mean, right now in the Rock Korean military, I would dare to say that the men eat better than a middle class family. So that's solved. We now have to 10-man barracks, which used to be 30 people in one barrack. Can you imagine that? No privacy at all.
Mm.
It was a nightmare. But that's what they endured until I want to say maybe 10 years ago. You know? And they're going to go to a four-man barracks, but it's going to take another 20 years to do that. But that's where we are. Uh, but now, the younger generation, they're accustomed to information
Mm.
and they're accustomed to a much greater speed And so I think um, the Korean military, with its old traditions, cannot meet the expectations of the new soldier or the young men.
Mm.
So I think we must change. Now, having said that, I really believe that during the initial boot camp phase, maybe 1 month or 2 months during the boot camp, they need to have a taste of deprivation. No warm showers, cold showers, 30-man barracks, just to give them a taste of, oh, holy crap. I mean,
Mm.
this is what could have been, you know. Uh, but I feel that in the future, not only better barracks conditions, but even daily passes are something that is required within the Iraq military because
Mm.
now we can contact everybody. They can mobilize within a couple of hours, and we have the ability to know if something is not right in North Korea. So I think we need to change.
I have so many questions for you, General. One which I really want to get to later would be, how did you survive those conditions of what the military was? You spoke there about the necessity of deprivation, especially during the training period, and the necessity of cold showers and experiencing that. I see such a difference in my university students, the ones that have completed their military service and the ones that haven't, the way they approach me. And they're often 200 centimeters tall or some towering above me, but they say yes sir, no sir when they're submitting their work and things. But what I'm curious about, General, is what does that deprivation do? Because we don't normally advocate deprivation in modern society. It's normally about, you know, you only YOLO and enjoy yourself and do all this. That kind of punish yourself or go through this is not a common mantra that we hear. What does that deprivation in the boot camp provide? What influence does it have?
Well, I think the first thing that you gain is the realization that not everybody is as fortunate as you are. You look at the guy next to you,
Mm.
to your left, to your right, in front of you, and behind of you, and you realize, gee, my life is not as bad as I thought. Or they realize, gee, my life is pretty good. And so I think one of the best gifts that military life provides to oneself is the realization that I'm a lucky guy. Now, having said that,
Mm.
you might be too young, but in 1978, there was a movie called Superman. Uh, and this is the original movie.
Mm-hmm.
And Lex Luthor, I can't remember who it was played by, but
It's not
he's the
Gene
villain.
Wilder. Mm.
No, no, not Gene Wilder. Gene Hackman.
That was close.
Yeah. uh, Lex Luthor says that uh, there are people who read War and Peace and think that it's an adventure, and there are those who read the back of a chocolate bar and discover the secrets of the universe. So what I'm trying to say is,
Mm.
same experience.
Mm.
Some young kid will say, "Holy, this is the waste of my life. I hate this. I hate the military. I hate the uh, country for the rest of my life." That's one person. The other kid will realize how lucky he is, and um, he will look at his life differently. And 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 this person, a person of I want to say maybe optimism,
Mm.
will learn to be patient with his life. And I think that's one of the best lessons that a person can gain. So if somebody was to say that military life is a waste of your time, it's only a waste of your time because you thought that it was a waste of your time. People who have uh, had a good, they were able to find a silver lining in the experience. become, I think, better people, better teammates, and a better person. So it's the perspective that you have of the military, of life.
Mm.
And this goes a further where, we don't create a person in the military. We are given, 18-year-olds or 24-year-olds, and we mold them into soldiers. And in the molding part, we use, deprivation as one tool to do that. And but Korean society itself is very competitive. We indoctrinate our kids. We give them knowingly or unknowingly values that they bring into the military.
Mm.
And 10, 20 years ago, it was really good because they were already very disciplined young men who came in. Now they're not so disciplined, but still, compared to other societies, I truly believe that the Korean young men are smarter. They're pretty, healthy,
Mm.
and uh, it, with some decent leadership, they can do things that other armies cannot do. So the young generation, in my view, is the best in the world.
I want to just very briefly echo your praise for some of the Korean young men, because I think they get a bad rap in the media these days. I think there's all sorts of labels and things being placed on them, often to create political division amongst people. But in my experience as well, teaching across the universities, there's not huge problems with insolence, with drug use, with violence. They're generally, studious, serious, intelligent, generally very healthy people, which is not something that can be said for everywhere in the world. When you mentioned this deprivation, just perhaps to finish that BTS story that we started on, do you have any insight on what somebody like Jin might experience? And it's all booba boo and timba tim. It differs from barracks to barracks and what kind of service. But we know that there have been other celebrities like G Dragon or Temin. They've gone in the past. Will they sort of get a special flag around them and they get to go in different places, or how does that work, General? If somebody of that stature goes in, is there a general protocol that's observed, or are they just one of the boys?
He's a grunt. Now,
Yeah.
he should be just a grunt.
All right. All right.
Now, if he goes into a bad climate unit, heaven forbid, some knucklehead, officer or somebody is going to try to give him some extra uh, points,
Mm.
or treat him differently. This would be a big mistake. Now, I don't think that will happen because of the scrutiny these days for that goes on in the military.
Mm.
So it will be very difficult for anybody to give him any kind of special treatment. Uh, and I think this person, Jin, is smart enough to know that it's in his best interest not to get any kind of special treatment. And why would he need it anyway? Does he need another piece of meat for his meal? No, he's going to get it enough beef, chicken, pork, and fish that he would ever want. Okay, so they even have vegetarian meals these days, so it's fine.
Mm.
Um, uh, I would suspect that because of all the scrutiny that he and his other fellows will be facing, if everything is the same, he will be treated the same. Now, the only concern that I have is the Ministry of Defense said that they will allow the BTS group to have opportunities to conduct entertainment, right?
Mm.
I
Oh.
hope that was just a passing statement, and they were not serious, because I cannot imagine you know the military allowing this kid to dance around while he's in uniform. That even if that opportunity was given to this group, I think they should say, nope, we're not going to do it. We're going to be good soldiers and do our 18 months and get out as soon as possible.
Mm. One of the things I notice in your observations and the way you describe the system as it is and the system as it should be is that focus on equality and that focus on, this is the rules and this is what you follow. And I just perhaps want to ask you about, whereas I see a lot of my international students and Western students particularly, they're focused on elements of discrimination regarding race or discrimination regarding sexual orientation. Whereas in South Korea, I feel like there is a big focus amongst young people on chabyol, on discrimination, but it's discrimination in terms of economic or educational. They want that fair shot, they want that fair crack of the whip, they want that kind of level playing field. Do you have any observation about the importance of maintaining that element of fairness, of equality amongst people in society, irrespective of financial wealth or social position? Is that something, is that a bit too utopian? Is that achievable? Can we all be equal before the law if one of us has 500 won and one of us has 500 million won?
Yeah, that's not a military question though. Uh,
Yeah.
so yeah, I believe that uh, equality, especially under the law,
Mm.
must be the center uh, core principle that binds a society, especially a society like Korea.
Mm-hmm.
But the fact of the matter is, people who work harder deserve more fruit of their labors,
Mm-hmm.
and people who don't do as hard as other people, they get left behind. Having said that, if you're coming from a wealthy family, you get a better opportunity. Some people use that opportunity, some people squander it away. And so this is a situation or question that has been, ever since the Stone Age, when people gathered together, that inequality existed. I believe South Korea is a society that has somehow morphed into where it's actually looks at like it's criminal to be rich, and filthy rich is
Mm-hmm.
something that is actually that is prevalent. So I think rich people need to understand that they can't be rich on their own, and people around them need to be happy. And all those bad practices that we used to have, the word kapjer, right?
Yeah.
The impolite ways of these people treating people serving them food, which is very stupid because they will spit on your food,
Yeah.
and and being so inconsiderate. I think all of that needs to go away, and I think my society is getting better as we go. But at the same time, this misconception that I can have benefits without working for it,
Mm.
I think is very dangerous. Having said that, I know that a percentile in my society has that concept, but still the predominant thinking is you must work hard and you must study hard. You must make you know, you must work hard in order to get results. Is still the basic thinking of Koreans, which I think is the uh, best resource that we have right now. Is those kinds of thinking people that we have, especially among our young people.
I will try to ask you questions about the military, but I'm also uh, incredibly fascinated about your perspective on life, considering how much you've seen and what you've done. One of the big changes recently has been, and you've spoken about it on your YouTube, is the introduction of mobile phones or their usage into the South Korean military. And this is relatively a rather recent addition. South Korea is one of the most wired countries in the world. If you take the subway, you'll often see people just like this on their phones, and there's a push towards an untaxed society. South Korea seems to be going more metaverse than anywhere else in the world. Whether or not that's a good or bad thing, you've spoken about the introduction of mobile phones into the South Korean military. Now, I believe they're allowed to use them like 6 p.m. till 9 p.m. on weeknights. And you've also said that this is helping to reduce elements of improper behavior, of gaptil, of the use of power, maybe controlling gondes, if we want to go into that language. Could you perhaps give us some insight into this introduction of mobile phones into the barracks in South Korea, how it might be solving problems, or what effect it's had thus far?
Okay, let's just talk about the eight-man barracks, okay?
Yeah, okay.
This is the most modern barracks. It's supposed to be the most liberal of the barracks. In each of these barracks, you have a TV,
Mm.
and the guy who controls the remote is now normally
What's he
the eight
called?
guys.
TV?
He's the
Hyun?
he
No.
now whatever he's called,
Yeah,
he's the head honcho,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
So normally what they do these days is all the eight men in one room is supposed to be just friends, but it's not the case. The Koreans, they instantly grade each other.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody has to be on the top and so forth. So you go into a barracks after a long day, and there are chores. You have to clean your boot. You have to take your, you know, uh, wash your uniform, clean your socks, take a bath, all these things.
Mm.
Uh, you're not gonna go in and lie down on your bed. That ain't gonna happen. Now, some people are fast, some people are a little slow, and that's where it gets to. Hey, dickhead, get up and do this. Hey,
Mm.
and so it's a very stressful environment. And um, in the case of DP is a great example. If there were cell phones for every soldier in that kind of situation, they could have called somebody. Without cell phones, do you know how many public phones are in a 400 man unit?
3.
Three is a good number, probably three or five.
Mm.
So that means 100 people will want to use that public phone a day within a span of 2 hours. Okay. And
Mm.
then it'll be, there'll be a shy guy, A, a rough guy, B. A rough guy comes and says, "Hey, are you still going to be on the phone?" You know, and then he's gonna borrow the little, phone card and not pay him back. I mean, 1,000 inappropriate things can happen. With the cell phone, that's all gone. Okay.
Mm.
So I'm just giving you an example of all the little nuances that guys like you probably can't even imagine happens in a unit. I've seen some really bad leadership. I saw one guy, an officer, he used to tap the public phone because he wanted to know what his soldiers were telling their moms and dads.
Mm.
Dickhead,
Yeah.
really poor officers, but these guys exist, and they brag about it that they were able to tap into the public phone, which, by the way, is illegal.
Mm.
Anyway, you know, by having cell phones, it's I believe 6 to 9:30. Okay, on weekdays and on weekends they can use it 24 from Saturday to Sunday. What they're discussing now is soldiers being able to use it during the day from 8 to whatever or whatever time that they want. It's a little tricky because you want your soldiers to be sleeping when it's time to sleep.
Mm, right.
You don't want them to be texting their girlfriend at 2 a.m. asking her where she is. That's a little dangerous.
Mm,
I mean, that's really dangerous. Uh, the military is concerned about a soldier uh, uh, taking photos or divulging confidential information. That ain't gonna happen. It doesn't happen that way.
mm,
They're worried about soldiers using their phones during training. That is also unlikely because if you have a cell phone and you put it in your pocket and it's raining or you have to be in the mud, your
mm,
phone, your $1,000 phone is going to get ruined. Nobody's going to do that, you know. And if you're on an operation, then you take out, they're going to take away your phones, which is what everybody does. So I believe that having the ability to have these cell phones really contributes to not only morale but preventing unlawful activity. It's got a lot of benefits. Um, those who are opposed to cell phones in the barracks are thinking of the old style discipline. You know, yes sir, no sir, things like that.
mm,
Um, that kind of discipline is not the kind of discipline that we're looking for. We're looking for men who understand why they have to do this. We're looking for men who are convinced that they're doing the right thing. You know, the people who are against cell phones are probably those who don't want their men to know what the hell is going on. And so that's not what we want.
mm,
What have we seen in Ukraine right now? We have seen that motivated soldiers, like the Ukrainians, who know why they're fighting, are fighting much better than the unmotivated soldiers, like the Russians, who don't know why the hell they're there. So that's the kind of soldiers that we need to. That's the kind of soldiers that we need. And the only thing is the old style Korean officer corps and the senior NCO corps who just can't adjust to this new circumstances.
mm.
Well, if that is the case, they should get out of the military and maybe drive a taxi or something. I hear we're low on taxi drivers.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I
Yeah,
hear we
yeah,
are. It's
yeah.
becoming harder and harder. Either need 24-hour subways or more taxi drivers because it's very difficult to get home these days in Seoul. I, the more you speak, General, I have these questions of the difference between discipline and leadership and then abuse, because I think it must be a very fine line. And I also want to ask you about discipline in your own life, like how you control that. But just staying on the military, just for this part, you mentioned not having a mobile phone in your pocket when you're doing training, when you're in the mud, that $1,000 phone gets broken. You mentioned that going in as a grunt and what these people are expected to do is to be trained or learn how to kill a man. I'm just curious. I don't know how much you can divulge or how much you would. What does that training actually look like and feel like? And for someone like me that has not done it, or for anybody else listening, are you doing laps of a field? Are you standing outside in the rain? Are you doing obstacle courses? Do you do guns? Do you fire guns once a week, once a year, and that's it? Can you just give us an insight into that practical, hands-on training, what it's like?
Training is divided into individual training, unit training, and tactical training. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, Physical training, which maintains the body physique, is a good 25 to 50%, which is a great benefit, you know.
Mm.
The rest is getting to know your job. If you're an infantryman, you really need to shoot. You need to be physical fit, and we have 7 tasks that an infantryman must do, like wear a gas mask, first aid, things like that.
Mm.
Okay, so we practice, and you do that. That's how it should be. In reality, because the Korean units lack operational funds. Let's say you have a light bulb that's broken.
Mm.
Who changes that? In a perfect world, you should have a maintenance person doing that, right?
Right.
If you have a broken staircase, how should that be fixed? In a perfect world, you should be outsourcing that to some construction guy and he would come and do that.
Mm.
Well, in Korea, in the Korean military, a lot of that is done by the soldiers themselves. So it eats away from training.
Mm.
That's, and you know, the perfect green fields, the weeds that have to be picked. Who do you think does that? And it's not the what do you call it, the weeding company that does that.
Mm.
So that's why a lot of soldiers say, you know, when I was in the army, all I did was a lot of work, you know, manual work, digging and shoveling and all that kind of stuff, and not much training. So I think now with the lack of soldiers and the shortening of uh, the term of service, the Korean military is indeed going to outsourcing. And so now, if
Mm.
the light bulb does go out, the soldiers don't do that. They have a group of people who do things like that. But there are still a lot of work that has to be done by the soldiers themselves. So um, it's not only training that they have to do, but maintaining and the barracks that goes around.
Mm.
And so uh, a soldier's life is very monotonous. It's great food, but it's great food every day. You know, there's one thing that I've learned is human beings need variety.
Mm.
So it's not just enough to feed a person. And you know, being a military person all my life for 38 years, one thing that I have come out with is the real value of freedom, the freedom to do what you want, to the freedom to think what you need, what you want to. As long as you're not hurting somebody else,
Mm.
I believe freedom of speech, freedom to do things uh, is fundamentally so precious that I gained a great pride in that I have worked to ensure the freedom of my people. And so, you know, when I see uh, all these demonstrations and all that, you know, I don't agree with what they're saying 99% of the times, but 100% of the times I agree with their right to express themselves, you know. And that's what the military does not allow you to do. You cannot do what you want. You cannot say what you want because
Mm.
we are under stricter laws and regulations. We cannot wear what we want. You know, we have to eat when they tell you to eat. And so all of this is to train the person to conform, to obey orders, to do things that a person will not do or think twice before doing in normal conditions. Because, Dave, war is hell. And if people start questioning why they're doing this in war, we're going to lose. If we lose, then there's nothing. So in war, I don't care what the war was about, or if there's war, you got to win. And this is the part I feel that right now the ROK military is a little bit confused about. Because in the old days, we didn't have to explain all of this. We didn't have to explain this to ourselves. We had our orders. We didn't question it. We just did it. Now, our younger generation is questioning every order. The older senior generation is perplexed. They can't understand why orders are being questioned. And so there's this gap. And a lot of the senior generation, they're just giving up because they can't understand, or they don't have the ability to explain why they have to do this crazy thing. Why the hell do we have to march in the rain when, if there's war, probably nobody's going to fight in wartime when it's raining, because our night vision goggles don't work or whatever. But that's what we are supposed to be doing. So right now, it's a very confusing time in the Korean military, but this is also a very good process. And at the end of the day, maybe it'll take a year, maybe it'll take 10 years, we'll become a much stronger military.
Do you have any insight or advice on the importance of what discipline brings to us, or how we can discipline ourselves, or how we should discipline ourselves?
Well, as a person being a little overweight, I don't think I'm eligible to give other people advice on 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 fried chicken,
Yeah.
uh, or the delicious pastries that we have. I'm a chocolate guy myself, but
I
uh,
like it all.
I think the important thing is not giving up. You know, some people say at a certain point, ah, I'm gonna just give up and and drink what I want, smoke what I want, eat what I want, and do what I want. I think that's irresponsible uh, to oneself.
Mm.
As you know, Dave, we have a serious problem where we are the highest uh, suicide rate in the world. And one of the top concerns in the ROK military is to prevent suicides. So, in an average year, about 100 soldiers kill themselves, are killed during service. Among the 100, about 60 are from traffic accidents, both in and when they're on leave or something. That's lower than the average Korean society. About 20 or 25 are suicides. So we in the military, we invest a great deal on preventing suicides, and yet we still have 25. So and then the rest is health reasons or accidents of other kinds. So suicide is mainly because people think that their lives are their own, right? They think, oh, it's my life, so I can take it. Well, I don't agree. Life is a gift from your parents, and your soul is a gift from, God. That's what I believe. And what should we do as good human beings when we receive a gift? We don't look at a gift and say, gee, this is only 5,000 won, so I'm going to throw it away. This is 5 million won, so I'm going to put it on the. That's not how you should look at a gift. Whatever the gift price is, you take care of it, and you do your best. And so I would say that you know, being being in a situation, especially in the military, provides you an opportunity to look back at your life at 21 or 22. I mean, how many people have that opportunity? And I think
Mm.
it teaches you, maybe I should lose that 5 pounds. Hey, maybe I should, well, if that guy can do that, I can do that as well. And so I think those kinds of uh, opportunities are given to an individual that he can really self relook at himself and and exercise and realize I need to be better at losing weight or restraining myself. And I really feel that uh, uh, just having the thought of trying to be, you know, less of a drinker or uh, doing less of this or that or doing more of something else is the important thing and not giving up. And it'll be a fight till the day we die, but you know,
Mm.
I think that's very important.
Yeah, absolutely. Very well said. And I intend to keep fighting. I do have a question coming up for you about media representation and what you've spoken about the tragedy of suicide, which is a huge problem not only in Korean society. It's the number one leading cause of death for young people, also old people in great numbers, but then in the military as well. One of the first Korean films I ever watched was JSA, the Park Chan-wook film that came out during the around the Sunshine period with Kim Dae-jung and Song Kang-ho, Lee Byung-on, and I guess I'm allowed to give spoilers for movies that are 22 years old, but at the end of that, which is the movie with South Korean soldiers and North Korean soldiers, it it I was gobsmacked because Lee Byung-on, the hero, the protagonist, commits suicide at the end. It's seen as a sort of a noble move, and I was used to watching Bond films where he like kisses the girl and sails off into the sunset and everything's good. But it was something I noticed more and more in these Korean movies where the good guy or the virtuous guy does choose that path, and I saw it represented in media, and it did make me wonder why that was happening. Do you have, just maybe before we talk about North Korea, do you have any observations about things like JSA, things like DP, um, what was Descendants of the Sun, Taeyang의 Hue, like the way Korean military is represented in the media? Does it make you feel like, yeah, that's pretty good, that's right, or do they get it wrong, or is there a sort of glorification? I'll just make one more point before I ask this, because one of the producers that I respect very much, she once said to me early on, David, you say whatever you want and everything. Be careful about what you say about the military. She said that to me in confidence, and I remembered it, and I respect her very much. And so I was always curious about representation in the media. Do you have any observations, General, about how the military is presented across these mediums?
Hmm. So the three examples that you showed, you expressed are very different.
Yeah.
JSA, I just glanced through it because it was just too much drama for me. All the things that they were portraying is like a fairy tale. I myself,
Mm.
having been a senior member who uh, of the United Nations Military Armistice Commission, the senior member is given um, uh, it's not as strong as oversight, but I did have oversight of the JSA. So, and all the things that are in the movie is just baloney. Uh,
Mm.
and I've never seen a North Korean soldier who looks like Lee Byung-hun in my life. So that's so. But DP is dramatization, but a lot of it is true. Thing, you know, it can't happen in just one barracks. but all of
Mm.
those things combined can and did happen. Um, for Descendants of the Sun, it was a nice uh, uh, series. I usually don't watch series, but uh, and depiction of military is stupid officers, incompetent officers, great soldiers. Uh, so I didn't watch that, but being the
Mm.
commander of the Korean Special Forces, and then my wife really liked the series, and I thought, hey, they actually portrayed the Special Forces in a good light, and a lot of it portrayed the intricacies within the ROK military. For instance, the mid-level, commanders being wimps.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of that going on. Um, so, uh, so these movies are a little bit different. Um,
Yeah.
in every military, and I've served with a lot of other militaries, you have good leaders and you have bad leaders.
Mm.
And I must believe that there are more good leaders than bad leaders. But it's always the bad leaders who make up a better story. So that's why, I think these movies or dramas are focused that way,
Mm.
uh, which is I guess the nature of a movie flick, you know. But in the Korean military, in the 50 years ago, there was always these movies where the soldiers were fighting for justice and freedom and all that. They were not scared of getting killed, and well, that
Mm.
ain't true. We're all scared of getting killed, getting blown up. Uh, but then again, it's not as corrupt as you would think. 90%, well,
Mm.
maybe 80% are good officers. 20% are really poor officers uh, and non-coms. And but you have to take into account that the Republic of Korea is what, 75 years old,
Mm.
and it takes a long time for a country to mature. So now we got the cell phone part right, right? We still have to work on a lot more. One of the things that I would like to point out is when I
Mm.
was 40, like you, which is 25 years ago,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of Koreans used to spit. They used to spit everywhere.
Into
Nowadays, you
paper
really can't
cups,
see
like.
that.
Mm.
I wish, you know, they would spit everywhere in the streets.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now they don't. That's so I think my society is gradually, evolving into a better society. I would like to see more people, holding doors and saying excuse me and thank you, but you know, I guess it'll take a little bit more time to do that.
Mm. It was the changes. Yeah, people, the spitting, and it's incredible how quickly and how much it does change, and it seems to still be on an upward trajectory. Is my sense. I might not have the best sense, but it seems to be going that way, which can't be said for all societies and civilizations around the world. While you're here, General, I would love to ask you about North Korea. I know it's perhaps one of the most sensitive subjects in Korean society. We've seen this morning, October 24th, ships firing at each other. On the northern limit line, we've seen North Korea with missiles repeatedly sent into the EC over the past few weeks, and talk of an upcoming nuclear test. The reason South Korean men serve mandatory military service is because of that armistice, is because the war is still technically, it hasn't finished. My children and wife currently are above the 38th parallel in Gangwon-do, in a place called Wonton, where And up there, where my brother-in-law works, you see the tanks, the helicopters, the barracks all over the place. It's very easy to miss all that in Seoul. And I want to ask you, should we be scared of North Korea? Is North Korea a threat? Is the South Korean military like ready to take that on? Do we do diplomacy with them? It's a very broad question, but you know, there's hardliners and softliners and doves and hawks. And what's your take on Pyongyang, General?
Yeah, well, we don't need to be scared of North Korea or the situation right now. It's unfortunate, but we don't have to be scared. But we do have to be concerned. Okay. Tensions are high, which is very unfortunate. Having said that, you can have peace that is you can have peace that is not there's right kind of peace and there's wrong kind of peace. If you're willing to sacrifice your principles to not go to war, for instance, if you have a thug in your neighborhood and you're willing to pay him off, you're willing to, let him break the law just so that you will not have to go to war, that is the wrong kind of peace. Because in the end, he's going to come to your house and then he's going to demand something that you cannot give. For instance, your children or your wife. The right kind of peace is being able to have certain principles that are non-negotiable, and with those principles intact, you are able to maintain peace and, in fact, improve the relationship between your neighbors. So I believe that's the right kind of peace. Unfortunately, right now, we're not seeing either. The former administration, I think, had the wrong kind of peace. But to a degree, I can understand in order to deal with a country like North Korea, you might have had to give them leeway to do so. But, I drew the line when the two men, the fishermen, were forcefully returned to North Korea. That's when I said, okay, I don't care what the reason was. This is one of the principles that I, as a person, said, hey, no, we don't do that. And when they did it, that's when I said, that's the end for me. Right now, with the new administration, what they're doing, I don't know if they're ready for the consequences. But what we're seeing now is just one symptom of what they've been doing for the past couple of months. And so, Dave, Kim Jong-un, this man holds his power through terror and the maintenance of fear, right? If we challenge his authority and he doesn't reply, he's a dead man. He and his family are dead. So what do you expect him to do? No wonder he's firing off missiles and artillery. So we're in this situation. I think Kim Jong-un has no other choice but to shoot off missiles and artillery. And he's just daring us to abrogate the Comprehensive Military Agreement of 2018. Today's incident just highlights the very precarious situation we have in the northern limit line. Along the DMZ, at least we have fences that clearly shows which is our territory and their territory. The NLL, there's no line. There are no posters. It's just sea.
Mm-hmm.
water over there.
Mm.
So when the North Korean vessel, it was not a military vessel, but it was a shipping vessel, according to the reports. When it crossed into our territory, our patrol ship uh, had the duty to tell it to go back. And when they disregarded our message, we fired warning shots. And 2 hours later, the North Koreans shot some other rounds, showing that they are not going to stand idly by. Now, because it was 2 hours later, it seems they did their reporting and they got their guidance from higher headquarters.
Mm.
At least they didn't shoot into our territory,
Mm.
which they could have easily done. So there's a message there saying, okay, now we're not going to go to war with you, but we're not going to just let you shoot up things, you being the South Koreans, in those contested waters. So um, I think we need to make sure that we have our principles intact,
Mm.
but at the same time, not to raise tensions that we cannot control. But at the moment, this is just normal business. We had it good for the past couple of years with the CMA, but maybe it was the wrong kind of peace that we were looking at. Uh, and we're trying to readjust, and hopefully, we'll be able to do that. But there's no reason to be scared
Mm.
yet.
As a human, General, and again, you can pass if the question is too much. Would you consider sitting down in a room with Chairman Kim Jong Un and talking to him? Is diplomacy the way? Is it something that you think is the way forward? Would you do that? Would you talk to him, or is that the way that these things should be resolved, through human to human, person to person contact, or is there something that I'm missing?
Yeah, of course, you know. But the precondition is
Mm.
that South Korea, South Korea's security is guaranteed. That is the precondition.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you must ask yourself, how do we guarantee South Korean security? Now, if we have a war with North Korea, we're going to win,
Yeah.
but at great price, because we're really, Seoul is very close to North Korea, and Wonton is really close, and it's going to be a bloody fight. It could also be a long fight. Look at what's happening in Ukraine,
Mm.
because other people get involved. So, uh, it's going to be a costly war. And in the end, nobody's going to win and nobody's going to lose. So the smart thing is not to have war. So number one, we must guarantee the security of South Korea. Right now, our guarantee is U.S. forces on the Korean Peninsula. U.S. forces on the Korean Peninsula is not about winning a war. It's about preventing a war.
Mm-hmm.
They're the deterrence.
All right.
And sometimes USFK is shaky, right? Because the US president, uh, and you know who I'm talking about, says
Mm-hmm.
he wants to pull out US troops from Korea. And then we have some Koreans who want US forces out of Korea. So that's a little shaky.
Mm.
Another option might be that South Korea have its own nuclear weapons, right? Now, would South Korean nuclear weapons make the Korean Peninsula a safer place? No. Uh, South Korea having nuclear weapons would actually make the Korean Peninsula, in my view, a much more dangerous place. But the whole concept of nuclear weapons for nuclear weapons is mutual assured destruction.
Mm.
너 죽고 나 죽자
Mm.
전략. Yeah?
Mm.
너 죽고 나 죽자 strategy. So
Yeah.
people will come to their senses and say, why don't we think about reducing our numbers here? I mean, that should be the natural. So number one is making sure that South Korean security is guaranteed, then I think we can talk to, we should talk to Kim Jong-un and tell him, look, uh, do you know what North Korea wants?
Uh, the removal of American troops, isn't it? The
No, no, no,
28,000.
no,
No.
no, 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 no. It, basically, North Korea wants their guarantees for their regime survival.
The Baekdu line for the Kim
Yeah,
family. Mm.
yeah. So I say, fine, you can have it. So what is that? It's basically diplomatic relations with the United States. Okay, fine. As long as South Korean security is guaranteed,
Mm.
fine with that. Sanctions relief, go ahead. I don't mind Pyongyang turning into a Singapore. Trump had it wrong when he thought that Kim Jong Un would want North Korea to be a Singapore. Why the hell would he want that? You he probably wants Pyongyang to be a Singapore, but not the entire country.
Mm.
So no, give it to him. But again, South Korean security must be guaranteed. And then we coexist. And in the end, North Korea is a brittle society that cannot even uh, accept K-pop or BTS. Can you imagine what BTS would do to that society? Overnight, Kim Jong Un would be, swept aside by BTS. So so I believe that our system would win in the end. Now, the only thing in this logic that uh, that that really concerns me is North Korean human rights.
Mm.
The hundreds of thousands of people who right now are in such inhumane situation that we must never forget this fact. So I believe we do exactly what the Germans did: pay them off, 20,000 for a dissident,
Mm.
50,000 for a dissident family. Why not? I don't care. Now, what will North Korea do? They'll do exactly what the Cubans did in the 80s when Carter said, we will welcome all Cuban dissidents from Cuba. Remember?
Yeah.
Fidel Castro he emptied his prisons of rapists, thieves, and murderers. So the North Koreans will probably do the same thing. So, but still, I think that's the price the South Korean society must pay, because we will have to answer to our descendants uh, and 100 years from now, and they will ask, so what did you do for the North Koreans who were in those gulags? And we must say, well, not only did we pay for them, but we took the scum of their society and did our best to turn them into good people. So anyway, yes, we
Mm.
must talk to Kim Jong-un.
I've spoken with Lee So-hyun, who is North Korean, member of the Pyongyang elite, and she's now doing a master's in Washington. And Park Ji-hyun in the United Kingdom, the Conservative Party there. I've really enjoyed my human-to-human contact with the people there. And you're right, there are lives beyond the missiles, and we do have a duty and obligation, I think, if we believe in those values, to do something about it. If we bring this towards maybe the final straight, General, this conversation, this might seem like a very big shift in the 분위기, in the atmosphere, but I would like to ask you this question, if I can, about YouTube, particularly your YouTube channel, because, man, it's really popular. Millions of views on your videos, but it's interesting to see. We've spoken about technology and changes in modern society, but there does seem to be a culture in South Korea about how people are reminiscing, interacting, planning, learning about the military lifestyle, and they're doing it through YouTube. There is this thing in the country called 대리만족, vicarious satisfaction, and people do things online. But I noticed, looking through the comments on your videos, that people were saying that we can find the real person through these channels. We can actually, avoid media and gossip, but we get that interaction through YouTube. Do you think that, your YouTube channel and others have played a positive role in the lives of people in the South Korean military? Is it helping, and how is it helping?
Yeah, I wish I want to say that I'm contributing and playing a positive role.
Mm,
So, my YouTube channel has, I believe, 70,000 subscribers, uh, but it's a success in a different sense
mm,
because my videos, some of them did have a couple of million views, but uh, it's not viewed by that many people, maybe two, 3,000, sometimes 10,000 or something. But still, that's not a small number in my view. Uh, I am very careful of what I say or can say because there's a lot of information in this head that with the smart kind of people, they can figure out a, a lot of information about the South Korean organization. So I am very conscious of the fact that I cannot or should not
mm,
say certain things, especially capability or intent of the South Korean defense apparatus. There are many people in the YouTube world who talks about military equipment and all that, but I'm probably the only ex-military guy who touches upon it. And although it might be the same content, it's different if you know what you're listening to.
mm,
So I try to be very careful.
mm,
The reason that I started this was because one of my enlisted, and this guy was, one of 15,000 men that I commanded. He contacted me and said, "Sir, I've already always respected you. I have this ability to edit videos, and I would like for other people to hear what you say." So, he does all of this editing and that. So, and he and I are not looking for we're not looking to be successful YouTubers.
mm,
You know, our goal is to affect maybe 10, 20, people, especially the younger generation, and to uh, helping them through their journey in this maze that we call life.
mm.
And, I still remember when I was 20 years old and trying to figure out what the secret of life was.
I thought I knew back then, actually,
Yeah, yeah,
when I was young.
yeah. See what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm really endeared by the fact that there are 70,000 people who, despite all the dull things that are talked about, they recognize me and they're willing to, hear things.
Mm,
So it's not going to be something that my themes are not going to be something that the average person will say, "Gee, wow, I'm not good looking, or I'm not going to be, dancing around." But if you look at even the themes that I choose, if you listen very carefully, you can realize, okay, among the 1,000 things that are going around in the world, he's chosen this theme as the most important for this period.
mm,
And you must ask yourself, why is he doing that? So I think it takes a certain kind of person to connect and try to listen, and it takes that person to take a little bit more to fully analyze what I'm trying to tell them. because I can't tell them, look, we're in a bad situation, get the hell out of here.
Mm.
But uh, there will be instances when I could be more critical, and that's when we should really start worrying. So, you know, I've I've had a, I've had comments that support your question, which is, have I made a positive uh, impact? And one person is a success for me,
Yeah.
and I've had more than one, so I feel very happy and proud of what I've done.
I can see the success in the responses and the comments that I see on your videos, and now I feel humbled by the fact that I've probably missed the messages that you were trying to give. And so maybe the messages aren't for me being different, but I will think about them again and go back and looking at why your contents. Now, I'm suddenly curious about your most recent short that you posted, which was which was I'll let people go and find it for themselves. Go and check out General's YouTube channel. um uh, During, you gave away your age at one point in this conversation by saying that you were 20 odd years older than me. You've played a really important role in the development of South Korea, of this nation, protecting it, keeping it free, helping it develop. You've probably seen more than most people. You've probably forgotten more than most people have ever seen. And you said that inside your head is so much information. There's still more I want to ask you about at later dates. 1983, 2005, these important events that you've witnessed. What I'd like to ask you with this question, General, is what, through all your experiences, what have you learned about life, about humans, about the way we interact with each other, about war, about peace, about love? Are you able to distill some of the things that you've learned and seen into some observations, some wisdom for us? Can you give us some insight into what's going on?
Gee,
No
that's
problem.
that's a really big question. Dave, in the end, we all have only two choices, either to give up or to stick it in there, you know, and to do your best. But I think it's more about not only doing your best, but at least trying to do your best. Because a lot of people don't even try. So for me, I started out as a wimpy kid. I was never athletic, you know. Uh, I'm not tall. Uh, I wasn't, number one in my class. 7 years old, I was taken to the United States, and it was 1965, Dave. Do you know what 1965 was like in New York City?
Civil rights
Uh,
movement, wasn't it? Around that time.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Not only that, but it was, just before the Vietnam War was getting started, and killing Asians was just a normal thing to do. MASH was a hit, and Korea was a poor country. Most people, even to this day, they're not able to differentiate between North and South Korea. But in those days, they couldn't even differentiate between a Chinese and a Japanese and a Korean. So, it was very hard. Coming back to Korea was worse. So I realized at a very young age that bigotry and savage people, it's not about race, but it's just about good people or bad people. Uh, and I could never have, with my academic credentials, could have gone into the Korea Military Academy, and I only got accepted second to last of the 360 people that that got in because of my English. Uh, and when I was in the military academy, I had a really, really hard time because I was different.
Mm.
And it was really, really difficult. Uh, when I became a second lieutenant, nothing went right. I failed at everything. And so I still remember that cold, cold winter night as I was going to sleep in my cold, cold BOQ, that I thought to myself, gee, I'm not cut out to be a soldier. And then I said to myself, well, maybe tomorrow morning will be better. And then I fell asleep. And the next morning, things started changing. And so now at this stage, I can only say I was lucky. But I think, again, basically, we only have two choices, either to give up or to do our best.
Mm.
And, you know, that is the secret to life, not giving up and doing our best and see what happens. And in the end, no matter what your age or where you are, I hope you are fortunate enough to say that at age 65, which is mine, I can say to myself, gee, I had a great life because I've tasted the bitterness of life. I've tasted the sweetness of life. Uh, and most of all, I helped a lot of people. So I think it's very important. God's gift to an individual is not where he or she was born, to a rich family or a poor family. That's not the real gift. The real gift is God letting you know what you are, what your aptitude is. If a little kid knows at age 7 he wants to be a great painter, then he is blessed. That's God's blessing. And age 7, I wanted to be a soldier. And a lot of kids at age 7 want to be a soldier, but I actually became one, and I actually became a general officer.
Mm.
So, that was my greatest blessing from God. And the second blessing is that I figured out what the meaning of life was. And I think everybody needs to define for oneself what happiness is for that person. If it's money, go for it. You know, I think it's stupid, but if you think money is your God, go for it. Uh, you know, pretty clothes, go for it. Go ahead. But for me, it was taking care of my men. I really, really enjoyed doing that. I mean, I really enjoyed taking care of my men. Uh, and the when I was a platoon leader at 24, I had 35 men. When I was a company commander at 29, I had 130. When I was a battalion commander at 34, I had 450 to 800 men. When I was a regimental commander at 45, I had about 2,500 men. When I was a division commander, I had 12,000.
Wow.
And I really focused on those who needed my help. And it's such a great feeling to know that people rely on you and just taking care of the people. And in the end, they take care of you.
Mm.
So I would I would give advice to people that do your best, don't give up, and leave the rest to karma or God or whatever you think is, and be grateful for what you have and help those people around you. What are you going to do with millions of dollars? other than helping other people. And I think uh, that's probably the 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 lessons that I've learned. And I also believe that there are uh, good people. There are more good people than there are bad, but it's always the bad ones that get the attention. But if everybody was bad, I mean, how could we have the society that we have right now? And um, but I am concerned about the things that I see in my country right now, what I see around the world. And so, I try to do my best to be a good human being. But being a human being, I am sometimes very disappointed. That's why I have fire in my house. So, anyway,
I fully agree with the idea that most humans are good. And there's lots of humans that are very good, and that the meaning of life is often to be found in other people or in our interactions with other people and selfless actions. I think perhaps with your position, having so many men underneath you, and perhaps also with education, when we impact the lives of other people, we get to see the fruits of our labor. We get to see people change and develop. We're not making machines, or we're not working in this. We don't suffer from alienation in that much. I guess we see the change. If I could just perhaps ask you one last question, because you've said so much and I wasn't sure how I could even top what you just said. It was amazing. But sometimes when students come to see me for Sangdam or counseling, it's very easy when they know at age 7, or when I have them in their early 20s, that they want to be a painter, they want to be a soldier, they want to be into crypto and things like that these days. But it's harder, I think, when more and more young people now don't know what they want to be. That guidance that used to be there used to be more, I think, guidance from government, from society, from religion, from community. There were more sort of set paths, and now it's like you can be whatever you want, be whatever gender you want, whatever role you want, and that multitude of choice sometimes makes it hard for people. They get lost because there is so much. Do you have any observation on how you find out what you want to do for some young people today, General?
yeah, I'm a practical guy.
Mm.
So I tell them, look, you need to make a living, number one. Okay.
Yeah.
So make a living. As you do this, hopefully you'll do something that you enjoy and not something that you must do for a living. But um, I tell them, you need to get a job to make a living. Secondly, I tell them, if you're doing a job and making a living, try to enjoy it.
Mm.
You know?
Mm.
And maybe you'll think, hey, this ain't bad as I thought. And once you reach a certain level, uh, then you can delve into things that you've only fantasized before, you know.
Mm.
So in my case, I was really lucky in uh, enjoying what I did, which was soldiering. Uh, I've been shot at. Artillery shells fell on my location. I've seen my own men kill themselves. It's tragedies, hardships, and all these things. Uh, it really destroys the soul in a lot of cases. But um, I never thought that I would be more than a lieutenant colonel,
Mm.
because in all societies, especially in Korea, unless you're a really great, you know, uh, a right fit in an especially in the ROC military. You can't become a general officer. So, my hube, they tell me, sir, a guy like you should have ended his career as a lieutenant colonel. It's a miracle you made 3-star, and I agree with them. You know, so I think that in life, uh, I tell them, look, you need a job to make a living. Hopefully, you'll be smart enough to try to enjoy the the job that you have chosen, and maybe in the end you will think that this is right for you. But even if you don't, you need to be able to have some sort of financial foundation so that you can do something else. So for me, when I got out as a 3-star, because I prepared to get out as a lieutenant colonel. Are you familiar with the ranks? That's lieutenant colonel, colonel, 1-star, 2-star, 3-star. So I made 5 stages more. So I was able to have enough fundamentals, knowledge, networking, and all that, that when I retired, I was pretty well off, was able to enjoy my retirement. So I've been retired for 6 years now. I do a lot of community services. I try to explain about the ROC US Alliance. I try to strengthen the alliance by maintaining my relations with the Korean military as well as the US military here. I have a specialized group of people who advocate for the common soldiers' welfare and equipment. And I also do community service with animal rights. And my hobby is model building, plastic models. And so I don't have time these days, but I have a really hefty collection of little miniature figures that I enjoy playing with. So I'm a really happy
tanks?
guy.
Are they trains? What kind of
Yeah, mostly military stuff, but I'm a military historian by hobby. So you read or see a military history or an incident, and there are those battles that really move your heart. And when you see that, it's not about victories alone. It's about these great defeats where men fight to the death, where men go into certain death, and yet they do this. It's a phenomena that you can't understand. But when you read about these things, you have to reenact it, either by dressing up as one or, making a model and creating a diorama. So that's what I enjoy. Hopefully, within the next couple of years, I will, stop doing all this community service and just stay in my room, making these models and doing these reenactments. But again, going back to your question, I would tell them, look, get a job, number one. Number two, try to enjoy it. And hopefully, in the end, you will either feel, successful at it, whatever that success definition is, but you'll be able to have enough financial foundation so that you can do things in your later life when you retire. Another thing that I tell young people is to have as many children as they can, at least 5. But, that's
how many do you have?
Good for you. I used to have 2 boys, but now I have 2 men who act like boys. So
congratulations on your 2 men. It was Andrew Salmon with his work on Glorious Gloucesters that taught me about beautiful defeats, and and that
Yeah.
work, and his work as a military historian. He does a great way of bringing those to life with his storytelling and his focus on history and stories. Yeah. Um, General, I've thoroughly enjoyed this. I hope this is the first of many conversations we might have in the future, online, offline, on record, off record. I've learned so much, and I feel there's much more I need to learn. So thank you so much for your time, your generosity today.
Thank you for the opportunity. Uh, I just want to say that we Koreans are able to create a society that can be flexible enough that we can open up to the world and invite expats and foreigners to live in our country, and they are able to feel comfortable in this country. We Koreans, I think, have changed a great deal. And so it would be a pity for this country to go to war. So let's prevent that from happening as much as possible. Thank you again.